Hello,
All right.
everyone. My name is Caleb Kilburn, current freshman at the University of Florida, and today I am joined by motorsports journalist Noah Lewis. Noah has made a name for
Hey.
himself in the realm of NASCAR in the past few years and is currently the co-owner of TSJ101sports.com, where sports meets common sense. I like that. And travels across the nation covering the biggest events in NASCAR, ranging from the sport's biggest race, the Daytona 500, to the most important race of the season, the NASCAR Championship race at Phoenix International Raceway. Noah, how are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. I wish I was doing a little bit better. I'll apologize right off the bat for this congestion sound. I think everybody's kind of passing around a little cold around here
Mhm.
in the North Carolina area, and I'm sure everywhere else when it gets cold. But yeah, doing well overall.
All right, well, I appreciate you, Noah, once again for joining with me here today. I'm really grateful to take the time to talk to you today, as I've been a follower of yours for quite a bit now on my alt Twitter account. I just made a professional Twitter account now just to kind of keep up with the times, but I've been following you for a while now, and I'm really impressed. I would say you're definitely an inspiration to some extent. So thank you for joining once again.
Yeah, thank you for those kind words. Glad to have had you as a follower and been able to provide some coverage, and that you've found it useful for sure.
I already know I'm just going to get straight into the questions. We got 12 questions here today, just standard kind of questions. For those that are kind of confused, this was for an assignment for the University of Florida for MMC 1009. I think that's the course name. Um, and it's for you interview a professional, and I thought Noah was the perfect candidate for this. I've been following, as I mentioned, for a while now, so why not reach out? And thankfully, LinkedIn gave me some other information that we can address here as well, add on some extra questions. And the point of this was to get basic knowledge, basic, fundamentals from you, and also some
Mhm.
extra knowledge for myself because obviously I'm a fan. I'm gonna nerd out a little bit, so I might as well be honest on that regard. So you've been a motorsports journalist since you were 15 years old, according to your LinkedIn profile. How did that come to be? And did living around the Carolinas, basically the epicenter of NASCAR, did that influence it a little bit?
Yeah, so super interesting story. I think I have one of the weirdest stories ever, honestly, with how I got into racing. So I'm originally from the Virginia Beach area, and since now I'm in the North Carolina area. But yes, very, Virginia, just north of North Carolina, obviously. But no, I had no real ties to racing whatsoever until I was about 11 years old, and so things happened very quickly after that. But basically, I had a neighbor of ours that was a big race fan, and sometimes I would go over and hang out at their house. And one day he just asked me, "Who's your favorite driver?" And the only one I knew was Jeff Gordon. So I was like, "Okay, I'll just go with Jeff Gordon." And he goes, "No, you've got to be a Dale Earnhardt Jr. fan. You got to be a Dale Jr. fan." And I said, "Okay,
Course.
I don't know who that is, right?" And so I'm like, "Okay." And so he gives me this diecast car, and he's like, "This is Dale Jr.'s Budweiser car." And anyhow, he's like, "You know what? We're going to a race in Dover, Delaware, in a few months, and I'd like you to come with us and see what it's like." So I tried watching the week before, and I was like, "I don't know. I don't know if I'm really gonna get into this like he really wants me to." And so I went to the track the next week, and oh my gosh, I mean, it did not take long. The sights, the smells, the sounds, I mean, all the entire race experience. I was like, oh my gosh, we climb the stands, and you can see this Dover track that's like kind of sunk into the earth. It feels like when you're in those stands, and all of a sudden they crank the engines, and everyone's going wild, and you get to hear how loud these cars are, and then you smell that rubber and that Sunoco fuel, and I mean, the entire experience was amazing. And I tell anybody, if you would like to go to a NASCAR event, that my first piece of advice is to pick a driver, no matter what reason. You might have liked, I used to say you might like the M&Ms on Kyle Busch's car. Obviously, he doesn't have M&Ms on his car anymore. But
Mhm.
but that's what I would go to and say, you might like that, or you might, see something. You might have Geico insurance or Nationwide back in the day is what um, some people would look to. And so once you pick a driver, you follow that driver, and the rest is the experience of it. And so I was absolutely hooked from there, and I knew I wanted to be in this business, and literally, I mean, literally overnight, I knew. And so I thought I was going to race at first, and then I realized, okay, well, that costs a lot of money.
Mhm.
There's no real racing opportunities around me, and it led me to a Google search, a simple Google search, when I was 15 years old, where I typed in sites looking for NASCAR riders, and TSJ Sports popped up, and I was like, man, I'll reach out. And so I sent them an email and said, hey, I'm a 15-year-old with poor grammar, and I would love to know if I could just start trying, and if somebody
Mhm.
can work with me, because I think this is what I like to do. I like to talk, I like to write, I'm nosy. So come on, journalism, right? So
Mhm. Yeah.
um, yeah, so I reached out, and they said, we don't usually do this, but sure, we'll take in and pair you with a few people that we have in our NASCAR department that we just started, and they'll teach you the ropes. And they did. And when I was 15, I published my first story about Denny Hamlin and a throwback for Darlington, and the rest kind of happened extremely fast after that too.
Wow, that's really remarkable. Do you remember who won the race you went to?
That Dover race, that was
If I
Jimmy
had
Johnson.
if I had to make a bet, it was going to be
Yeah,
Jimmy. Yeah.
yeah. I think the second one that year was Kevin Harvick, but I
Mm,
remember going, and everyone told us Jimmy's won the last. I can't remember. He was on a streak at that point for
yeah.
sure. And then we went the next race, and I was like, oh, Jimmy's gonna win it, and I think Kevin Harvick got it on the second one.
All righty. Well, appreciate you for that insight. I mean, definitely helps those that are listening that want to get into it. And also for myself, I've been trying to think of ways that I can kind of dig myself in. And honestly, that might just be something I'll do as soon as we're done here. Um,
Yeah.
so I'll bring up the next question. Were there any people that you looked up to when you began your journey as a motorsports journalist?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of people that I looked up to that within the reporting and journalism landscape of motorsports, and one that always comes to mind is actually Claire B. Lang, who did SiriusXM, or who does SiriusXM NASCAR radio. I just always was intrigued by the questions she would ask, and I always enjoyed listening to the radio broadcasts, long drives or on the way back from the racetrack, and things like that. And so I really enjoyed, like I said, her show, and really kind of wanted to have that same style of question asking and things like that. And what's really cool about that story is that she's probably one of my closest friends in the business now.
Wow.
And so it's really cool how that all came full circle with really enjoying how she handled herself within the journalism side of things, and then also befriending her once I did get into the media center. So very cool story, but that's one that comes to mind for sure.
Yeah, her voice is definitely recognizable. I mean, I couldn't think of her name for the longest time because her she's just so recognizable. But yeah, very
Right.
interesting story. I'm going to ask you a question about TSJ 101 Sports. When gathering and
Sure.
publishing stories for TSJ 101 Sports, what would you say is the easiest and hardest part of that process?
Yeah, I'd say the easiest part is uh, is the fact that there are so many stories in our business to be told. There really are. And what's great about the racing industry is that there are so many people that want to tell their stories and are easily accessible to telling their stories. And so that makes things 10 times easier, I guess, when you have people that are willing to sit down and tell their stories, and you have such cool connections within our sport of how this person knew this person, or how this guy worked really hard to get to where he was, or this lady, to where she is. And so I think that's one of the easiest parts. One of the hardest parts, I guess, would be
Already, apologies for the cut there. No, we're not doing an ad sponsorship or anything. I don't make any money as of right now on this YouTube thing. My computer crashed, so apologies for that. Noah, you
Okay.
were talking about the hardest part of gathering
Yeah.
stories for for TSJ 101 Sports. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the hardest part for me is just is not wanting stories to always be perfect, right? Or not understanding that they won't always be perfect, I guess is the better way of saying that. And what I mean by that is that, I what I enjoy writing the most are feature stories and things like that, where I can put a lot of my touch into the story, and how it's crafted. And sometimes you can sit on those stories and look at them and nitpick so many little pieces, or you weren't able to talk with one person that you really thought was going to help the story, and you kind of beat yourself up over that. So I think that's the hardest part for me, is that sometimes I have to realize, okay, you know what, this is still really good. This is still a great story, and it doesn't need all of the things that I think it needs. It doesn't need to be this huge thing. So yeah, that's definitely, I think, the hardest part for me.
Do you utilize deadlines when it comes to that?
In certain circumstances, obviously, sometimes you have to use a deadline. If I've written feature stories about drivers before that have announcements coming and things like that, and obviously you want to time it perfectly with their announcement. Um, and then sometimes I'll set a personal deadline of my own that I feel that I really need to hit and get up stories for. But my favorite stories are those that aren't necessarily on deadline and are stories that I can kind of adjust and tweak and gather more if I need it, and then finally when I feel good about it, then put it out into the universe for sure.
All right, well, appreciate it. You've worked in a variety of roles in around motorsports, from announcing in the Carolina late model and modified scene to now writing and reporting for the previously mentioned TSJ101sports.com. What would you say is your favorite part as a journalist when it comes to such roles like announcing, writing, reporting? What would you say is a key favorite role of yours? What do you like doing the most?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's changed over time. When I started, I loved writing. That was my favorite thing to do. Since then, I've become less in love with writing. I still enjoy it when I can again do things like features and stuff like that. But when I started announcing, that was a very fun experience as well. And I'd love to do more of that. The announcing side was really a cool opportunity that kind of fell into my lap, and yeah, going to these racetracks and calling these folks in the Carolina Pro Late Model Series, that we now see making their way into the Trucks and Xfinity Series. That was extremely cool. Leland Honeyman Jr., William Sawalich, who did great things in ARCA this year. Lots of names that are up and comers were in that series. But I think that my favorite thing is the day-to-day kind of racetrack stuff where we can get in there, and truly my favorite part of a race weekend is when that race is about to happen. About an hour pre-race, during the race, and then that hour post-race is just electric because you are, tracking down all the stories right before they climb in, and you're covering it all on pit road. I love standing on pit road and throwing in my ear inserts and scanning channels and listening for things to happen. And then obviously post race, you've got everything from what you just saw to breakdown, and these drivers, they're focused on their one race. Well, we're out there focused on all 40 or 38 or however many are out on the track. We're focused on every one of them. And so while you're out there, you're kind of forced to look at 100 different ways, right? For 100 different stories for what feels like 100 different people. Um, and so yeah, that's definitely my favorite part. That rush of an hour pre-race, hour post-race, and everything in between there.
And it's ironic because my next question was about to go into the fact about being at the racetrack as a journalist and being there as a fan. How did attending the races as a journalist impact your experience compared to going as a fan?
Tremendously, for for sure. I think everybody kind of goes into journalism, if you've been a fan of the sport, um, kind of with this mindset that it's going to be really, really cool to to talk to, these gladiators, these guys that you've watched race and go at it for so long. And it is like right away, it is, that initial first few races that you cover, it's like, I cannot believe I just sat and talked to Kevin Harvick for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? It's just so cool. Um, then at a certain point, it becomes, people that you see every weekend, and it truly does. And it's not that it takes away from the experience, but the experience changes. It no longer is, whoa, I can't believe it's that person every weekend, but it becomes, what can I get this weekend? What will set me aside? What will um, do really well this weekend? What can we talk about with these drivers? And what are the storylines heading in? And then what storyline can I follow throughout the weekend? And it gives you a whole new rush. That same rush that everyone gets when they see those cars turn over and when they pull up and they get that first little glimpse of on the horizon of the grandstands, and then you pull up and you're like, oh my gosh, that same rush is there, but it's a different rush. It's more of a rush that you want to go get a story, you want to go do good things that weekend, bring good coverage to fans at home or fans there. And so it certainly changes, but it's still, you still are getting that same rush as you would as a fan for sure.
I find it really interesting how you mentioned earlier that your first race was at Dover, and immediately after you went to the race, you're like, yeah, I'm gonna get into this. And then here's me, who I've been a lifelong fan ever since I was like, what, 4 years old. My first race was the '09 race when Edwards went flying. He's my favorite driver, so um,
Mm.
hope he comes back. But that's beside the point. Um, and I still have not went to a race. I live in Orlando. I've lived in Florida my whole life. I've never went to a race. And it's just,
Got to get you to one.
yeah, I know. And the thing about it is my first like story could be the weekend I go to a race, which is crazy because I
Hmm.
kind of have to do, both of what you had to do, You get the adrenaline from seeing all the cars go by, and you get the adrenaline of, maybe seeing a couple of drivers and asking questions. I could have both maybe happen at the same
Yeah.
time, and that would be remarkable.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I mean, there is no feeling that I can ever compare to that first time I was able to climb a grandstand and just look out at the racetrack and hear the cars turn over and feel the atmosphere of the
Yeah.
fans getting into it. And still, let me tell you, that is one of my favorite parts of the weekend because it gives
Hmm.
me that split second of that feeling that I had that very first time. I'll
Yeah.
go out every race, pre-race, and I'll stand on the grid and I'll wait for them to fire engines, and then I'll just watch the crowd, and I'll watch the
Yeah.
crowd just go electric about the engines firing. And then when they roll around and the PA announcer says, and next time they come around, they're going to take the green flag.
Hmm.
Just sitting there watching so many people having the time of their lives is such a cool experience for me. It's one of my favorite things about every race weekend.
I mean, that's just the beauty of sports. We can be journalists, we can all write our objective stories, but and at our heart, we're all fans. We're all fans at the end of the day. We just
Right.
love watching what we're seeing. I'm gonna ask you a question about yourself. What allows a motorsports journalist like yourself to stick out from the rest? Would it be from intricate reporting, interesting stories, or or the way you carry yourself compared to others?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is important to stick out, right? Because if everybody was the same, we'd have the same everything, right? I mean,
Hmm.
obviously. So it is important to stick out. I think one thing you said there at the end about setting yourself aside and carrying yourself in a certain way is was big for me. When I got into the media center for the first time, I was 17, which is not does not happen often.
Hmm.
I don't know who else or how it's happened prior to me, but unchaperoned, I was a 17-year-old that was able to go into the media center and do this, and I was a junior in high school, so I'm like, this is crazy. I don't
Hmm.
Everything moved so fast, and it was all because I just started reaching out to people. I just started DMing people on Twitter and saying, "Hey, how do I do this?" And I think that's what's huge. And the minute I got into a media center, that is exactly what I did. I stood back and I watched and I observed and I watched the greats that have been around for so long and how they carried themselves, how they asked questions, what they did, and I just observed, and that's all I really wanted to do for my first few times in the media center, because I didn't want to jump in there and act like I was, on NBC or Fox right away out the gate. You know what I mean? I didn't want to jump in there and act like I'd been there for years, because that false illusion will lead people to think that you don't deserve to be around there. It's tough. It's a tough business. But when people notice that you've come in and you've shown the respect to those that have been there for a while and you have watched and observed their craft and you work on your own while doing that, I think that's what sets you apart for sure. And those that understand that principle of coming in and really observing and making sure they don't just rush at it. I think those that understand that principle are those that stick around for a while for sure.
Just a great response, Noah, and it lines up perfectly with our next with my next question. You're obviously a member of the National Motorsports Press Association, and no doubt you've had the opportunity to share the room with some people who you've definitely gotten influence from. I'd say people like Ken Squire, Mike Joy, Bob Pockris, and Jeff Gluck, the two probably on a weekly basis. Do you
Yeah.
recall any time you interacted with any of these guys, and what knowledge have you gathered from such interactions?
Yeah, so interacting with Bob and Jeff, that is pretty much every weekend. And truly it doesn't take anything away from the fact that they are wonderful journalists in our sport that are so well known because of how great they are, truly.
Mhm.
They do a great job. And I've had the privilege to be in their presence on a consistent basis to get advice and to again observe and see how they do their thing. When you talk about the late Ken Squire and Mike Joy, those two on a whole different field, it feels like, because they have really paid their dues in this sport. And I remember the first time that I was in Mike Joy's presence, and I just wanted to hang on to every word that he had to say. I think another one that is a great mention is who may not be as well known to everyone, but is wonderful is a lady named Deb Williams, who has been around the sport for a long time, and was one of the first females to really be consistently on the beat for NASCAR. I think so early on that they had a problem with her as a woman being in the press box because they said, we don't allow the wives in here. We can't allow the female journalists in here. And she
Mm.
told them, guess what? I'm staying in here. And to this day, she is at the track almost every weekend doing her thing. And when you listen to those folks talk, you just stop everything to listen to those folks talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You want to hang on to every word, every piece of advice, because truly they're a wealth of knowledge. And yeah, I mean it's truly a special time when you can be in the presence of people like that, and you get to hear their stories.
Yeah, people like her, Mike Joy, all the people you mentioned previously, they just definitely stand out in regard when it comes to motorsports journalism. But I have to say, Noah, let's not mention that how you stand out when it comes to motorsports journalism. You currently have 12,000 YouTube subscribers and over 6,200 Twitter followers, numbers that continue to go up monthly through your interviews that you like to do. You take videos, nice videos, might I add. I might need to ask you for your specs when we get done here because I need a camera like that. Um, in your opinion, oh boy, no Zoom. Stop telling me about time. 10 minutes,
Right.
we gotta be quick. In your opinion, how powerful is social media when it comes to sports journalism in our modern age?
Yeah. Oh man, it is. You said social media. Is that what you said?
So social media.
Yeah, yeah, it's very important. It is the key to staying up to date with journalism, in the modern age. Um, Not many people, there are certainly people, but not many people were doing as much video, even when I came in. And I saw that as a younger person, I saw that as a place that we could do better because we are now in an age where people love to consume their media through seeing it. We have so many ways. I mean, look right here. We have so many ways of being able to capture moments now, um, and see those moments, and not just talk about the emotion and story, which, by the way, is still a very, very important part of journalism, and we should cherish that, but also to directly let the fan in, basically. You get to have the privilege of asking the questions, but it's like you're bringing the fan into the room with you when you can capture that. And so, yeah, that's been a huge piece of things for me, and trying to build a social media presence. The reason I went on YouTube is because I got tipped off that somebody was taking my interviews from Twitter
Hmm.
and they were throwing them up, and I was like, oh man, well, I can do that
Yeah.
if they're doing it anyway. And I'm very glad I did. I think we hit 15 million views or something a
Hmm.
month ago, total on the channel, which has just blown me away. But it really has been a great tool to connect with a wider audience, and also to reach people that don't watch our sport. I've had many comments that say, "Man, is this what they do in NASCAR? I'm going to watch this weekend." And it's a great tool. Go where the people are, and when you can get hundreds of thousands of views on a video, and it brings more people into our sport and more fans, then it's a huge asset. And so, social media in general is that huge asset to keep the growth and consistency in our sport for sure.
Alrighty, Zoom is telling me I got 7.5 minutes exactly, but we only got three more questions. So I think we're doing really, really good here. So, or we got four more questions. Sorry. We're currently in the middle of the off season for NASCAR. How do you shift gears from the end of the season, prepare yourself for the next one?
Yeah, and by the way, if for some reason we do run out of time, if you just restart it, we can keep going. We're not going to
Hmm.
let Zoom
Yeah,
take us
we're
down.
gonna use our little methods to, yeah.
Yeah. But no, yeah, no, it's funny with being a journalist in NASCAR, you learn quite quickly that off season is a funny term because
Mhm.
um, it does not feel like there's much of one.
Yeah,
There's
there's only two
constantly,
months.
right? There's only two
Yeah.
months away from the actual racetrack, but even then, I certainly after our when we got the next gen car, man, the
Mm.
testing sessions so we had so many test sessions that off season that we were at
Mm.
the racetrack every few weeks. Um, but you still have a lot of media announcements. You have a lot of events to go to and things like that to cover, and of course, silly season. Silly season
Yeah.
continues to be every day with an announcement in some sort of series or big announcements like we just had about the deals that we're signing, media rights deals and things like that.
Mm.
So it's not too hard because you don't really ever get your mind fully out of it in the off season. Some of the drivers they're lucky enough to get away for a little while, whereas we're still covering their news and things like that. But it is a good time to really take a breath because one off weekend typically in a year, and we're a traveling circus that goes from this place to this place to this place. It can be a lot. There's been weeks where we've been on 7 straight weekends of traveling, and I've woken up in the hotel room and gone, "Where are we? What state am I in?" You know. And so this is a good time to kind of take that breath. The holidays are a great time. I'm glad we have the
Yeah.
holidays with our
Yeah.
families and things like that. But yeah, not too difficult to just keep the train rolling through the off season.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Brought to you by Zoom Hacks with Noah Lewis. We got a couple more questions here, three questions exactly. We're just going to roll right through them. And there's one question, the last question that's for myself because I'm obviously a fan. So, what would you say to those that are interested in motorsports journalism? You might have already answered this, but don't know where to start.
Yeah. So again, I mean, it's so funny. My story again is just so odd that it really took I had no connections, and a lot of people don't have any connections to the sport, and you feel almost like you have to, right? You're sitting there thinking, man, I have to have a friend of a friend or something like that. I had zero connections whatsoever to those in the industry. But you would be absolutely surprised about how many people are willing to give you a shot and are willing to answer questions. And so I absolutely just like I said, for me personally, I did a Google search about sites looking for NASCAR riders, and then I sent them an email and said, "Look, I have no experience, but I want to have experience. I want to learn, and I'll do everything possible to do so." And let me tell you, it was a hard few years to figure out the rules, the do's and don'ts as a 15, 16-year-old, and also to wait until I could finally get into the garage. And really, I mean, those 2 years were like, oh man. And even when I was 17, I got a bunch of no's until finally I got a yes. And they said, hey, look, we don't usually do this, but we're gonna have you sign a bunch of legal documents. Your parents sign a bunch of legal documents that say, basically, if you get run over by a race car, you won't sue us, and then maybe we'll talk. And
Mhm.
so, again, you just have to ask, be persistent. I wouldn't say, you have to understand that sometimes you aren't going to get answers, and
Mhm.
you can't bombard people with a bunch of different questions, but it never hurts to reach out. There are a lot of journalists in this sport that will quickly answer a DM and give advice. There are a lot of people within NASCAR itself that you can find. There's a great guy within our sport that works for NASCAR and their comms team. And as a 15-year-old, he jumped on a phone call with me, and all I wanted was advice. And I said, "Hey, look, I just want to know, how should I set myself up? What should I be doing?" And he gave me a bunch of advice. So continue to work hard, continue to try to get reps and do things that do build a resume. But also, I would tell anybody, don't feel afraid to reach out, to send that email, to send that DM, to make that connection. One of my first interviews ever, actually, my first interview ever, was with Jamie Little from NASCAR and Fox.
Mhm.
And what I did was I commented on her Twitter post and I said, I'd love to do an interview with you. I'm learning how to do that. Would you be interested? And she sent me a Twitter DM and she said, here's my email. Sure, let's coordinate this. And I was blown away
Yeah.
by the fact that she was so willing to do that. But people are willing to do that. So just be bold enough to take the step to reach out to people and to learn. And that's the biggest thing. Be willing to sit back and learn and understand that not everything's going to happen right away, but that with time and listening to folks like that, um, it will start to happen for sure.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. You're definitely giving me quite a lot of confidence because my I was kind of nervous about. Obviously, I was nervous about doing this interview, my first one, and I was also nervous about, oh, could I do more of these? But with you saying that
Mhm.
and just you just went out and asked Jamie Little, hey, you want to do an interview? It seems like I've always had the perception that, oh, they're just gonna deny me or they're gonna be rude. But people in this world just want to help. Some people in this world just really want to help those out there. People like Jamie Little. I'm sure there's plenty others I could mention. So I want to thank you for that
Yeah,
information.
absolutely. And again, the worst that can happen is you do get a no, or you do get a I can't right now. And those things happen. But you just have to learn to use that as fuel to move on and see who is willing to say yes. Because again, there are going to be plenty of people that are willing to say yes for sure.
All right, I got two more questions for you. This last one is directed mainly at yourself to your 15-year-old self. If
Okay.
you could give your 15-year-old self one piece of advice when it comes to motorsports journalism, what would that be?
Ooh. Oh man, gosh, one piece of advice to my 15-year-old self. Hmm. Wow, that's a good question, and that's one that's got me thinking for sure. I guess what I would say to my 15-year-old self is a lot of what I just said in a way, but to continue to be patient and to continue to learn. And again, when I was 15, it was so difficult to not want to do everything right away and be able to do everything right away. It was also hard to take criticism. I did not like being criticized, but there was a lot to learn, and and it just comes with that. There's going to be criticism everywhere you go, and so I definitely would tell myself, hey, continue to be patient. Things are going to work out, and continue to take criticism well and not be put down by criticism, but to be brought up and learn from criticism, because it's tremendously. I think, let me tell you, there have been people in this business that have said bluntly, "Hey, you are doing something this way, and I would suggest you don't." And you really have to evaluate that. You can't just dismiss it. You have to evaluate that, kind of determine if you feel that there's value in what they're saying. Sometimes things, people have different ways of presenting things to you. Some people are more direct, some people are passive. And you just got to learn how to take that all in, evaluate it, see what you can take from it to become a better person, if there's anything there. But yeah, that patience, that understanding criticism, that's definitely what I would tell my 15-year-old self. Keep doing that, and things are going to be all good.
And I'm sure that knowledge will definitely apply to those that are trying to get into journalism as well. Um,
Oh, yeah.
Lastly, this one's for myself. This is a fun one. I don't know if you've read the email.
Yeah.
You were in the pit lane of Josh Williams during the Xfinity Atlanta race last year and filmed his interaction with NASCAR officials after he parked his car in the middle of the track after getting black flagged. What was going through your mind? Because that footage, honestly, it always comes up on my feed sometimes, and it gives me a chuckle.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind?
Let me tell you, I love telling this story. So I am so glad that you added this question, because it is one of my favorite stories to tell now. Um, Ironically enough, so I mentioned earlier, I love being out on pit road. I used to, when I first got in the media center, I liked to do more live tweeting. I've kind of come down on my immediate updates about everything, because I like being out on the grid now a lot more. I like being walking up and down pit road and talking to crew members, or seeing what's going on. And again, this is a huge thing, that is valuable because of moments like this, right? So this particular day in Atlanta, it was absolutely freezing. Like, I mean, cold and windy. And when it's windy and it's cold, it is cold. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so, absolutely freezing. I had no reason to be outside. I had every reason in my mind to say, I'm going to go inside and I'll just sit this one out in the media center. Even though I like to be outside, I'm going to just go in and be warm. There were donuts inside. I mean, like, there was a lot of reasons to be inside, right? Hot coffee.
Yeah.
But no, so for some reason, I just kept going, man, after this lap. And anyway, they started wrecking a lot, and it was
Yeah.
like it was a lot. And so I was kind of sitting out there to watch, and two fans approached me and were talking to me about some of my videos and things that have been posted before. And so I got into a conversation with people, and one of the guys asked me, how on earth do you end up in all of these like moments? You're in the middle of Sam Mayer and Ty Gibbs' fight.
Hmm.
You're right there when Denny Hamlin and Joey Logano went at it in Martinsville. I mean, how do you wind up in these crazy spots? And I promise you, I just said to the guy, really, it's about being at the right place at the right time, like luck of the draw. Sometimes
Hmm.
it just happens. You have to use your intuition in some of those moments. I mean, of course, Sam Mayer and Ty Gibbs were not happy with each other on the racetrack that
Hmm.
particular night that they fought. So you're thinking, okay, something might happen here. Let me get over there. This instance was completely just out of the blue, right?
Hmm.
So I just had gotten done telling this guy about right place, right time. And I literally turned around right in that moment and saw Josh. I heard the crowd. I saw Josh parking in the middle of the front stretch. And I went, what the heck is happening? I see him throw the window net down. And so I picked up my phone and start recording. And before I hit record, I looked at the guy and I said, like right now is one of these moments that I'm
Hmm.
saying right now. And I start recording. Again, luck has it that we are
Hmm.
in I call it a dead box, dead stall. It's an open pit stall, between pit stalls, and they keep a few of these open, right? And so we're in a dead pit stall, which happens to be two pit stalls down from Josh's.
Hmm.
And he starts charging up through the grass. and no one's out there because everybody's in the warm with the donuts and the coffee, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the only one out there, and of course the cameraman for network, and Wendy Venturini was out there for PRM, and we just get right there at their pit box, and he storms up and he's going off, right? And I'm the only guy there recording it. TV can't even take his audio because he's saying so many cuss words and things like that. Or, he's they don't take that audio when a driver's mad because they don't
Mm-hmm.
know what they're gonna say. And Regan and Wendy are in the middle of trying to decipher, can we interview him? Because there's a policy, and some people don't know this, but there's a policy within when a driver is ruled out by being parked or contact or things like that, we're
Medical
not
center.
allowed to interview them until they're checked and released from the care center.
Yeah.
So we're not supposed to. Now, usually that's an easy process because they're in the ambulance and they go straight there and then they come out. Well, this
Mm-hmm.
was a weird one because Josh walked over. And so everybody's kind of in the debate, like, do we say anything to him? Do we not? Do we just? And I'm just
You're
like,
just
let him
there.
go.
You're just there
Just
holding the
let him.
camera.
Just let him talk. I got my mic in this hand, and I'm like, just let him talk.
Hmm.
And I think Wendy was gonna go for it, and she goes, "Do you want to talk?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, baby, I want to talk." And I mean, it was just absolute gold.
Hmm.
And um, and yeah, I mean, it was truly just one of those holy crap moments. And so
Hmm.
to get to the care center where we wanted to talk to Josh, to get to the care center, you have to go past the media center. So I took a little left at the media center. I stood in the doorway to connect to the Wi-Fi. I threw that video up. All of a sudden, my phone is like boom, 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 boom with notifications. And then we can't even talk to him at the care center because NASCAR wanted him straight to the trailer. And so
Hmm.
then we stand out at the trailer, and I'm telling you, it's so cold. And by this point, I'm the one that's been out in the cold the longest, right? Because everybody else was allowed to be, in the media center, but I'm like staying at this hauler until I see him. And which ended up being, I think, an hour and a half or 2 hours post race. It was pitch black dark when we finally got him.
Hmm.
And that just is what happens sometimes. But it was truly one of those luck of the draw,
Hmm.
being right there, and being around moments. And the fact that I was talking about those moments when that happened is really the
Yeah.
coolest part of that story to me. Another thing I'll just add because I'm thinking about it is to anybody that is a aspiring motorsports journalist or journalist in general, sports journalist. It is a tough business. So understand that it is a tough business when it comes to people. You're going to interact with a lot of people, but also when it comes to the job itself. And that means, and when I say that, I mean that it's not your regular 9 to 5, right? There are
Hmm.
days in Daytona where we've sat there for 16 hours, 17 hours, waiting for just a rain delay to be called. Then you come back that next morning and you do it all again and you sit there you work another 16 hours. Phoenix, I think I did somewhere like 57 or 60,000 steps around that track that weekend. It is it is a grueling job, but it is one of the coolest for sure. But understand that it does take a lot. You're in the car driving 7.5 hours every other weekend, and you gotta find some podcasts, find some
Yeah.
just find some stuff to listen
Hmm.
to, and understand that you're gonna work holidays and you're gonna do things like that. But like I said, it is a very rewarding, a very cool job to be able to bring news and bring coverage of a sport to an audience, and so wouldn't trade it for sure.
Yeah, you definitely mentioned something interesting there. How you mentioned you were there for the Sam Mayer, you were there for the Josh. Well,
Mhm.
ironically enough, you were there for the Josh Williams incident.
Yeah,
It seems that understanding driver psychology definitely helps with that because I've been a fan for years, and obviously, when me and my friends are watching the races online, we're always saying, "Oh, they got to get a camera on that guy after something happens." I
yeah,
think understanding that psychology kind of may help you put yourself in that position. But I mean, the Josh
yeah,
Williams story, I mean, there's no level of driver psychology that's going to
yeah.
prepare you for that one.
You never, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, you never expect that one, but yeah, absolutely. There's the psychology of it, always kind of thinking ahead. And again, that goes back to my point earlier that we get the privilege of covering all these guys, right? All these all these diverse personalities and varying personalities. Um, and so they're in their singular mindset every weekend. They're thinking about themselves, maybe a few teammates if you're, if they want to, but we get to think about all of them, right? And so when you are talking to all of them every weekend, you do start to develop, okay, that guy, he thinks like this, he's gonna do something or he's got a lot to say. There are
Mm-hmm.
guys that when, they might have an incident on lap nine, but after they get out of the car, they're gonna talk about that lap nine incident. And you just
Mm-hmm.
have to know that. And so yeah, there's certainly an element to that you pick up on where you have that kind of intuition of, all right, here's where I think I need to be. Martinsville, let me tell you, that place is tough because you never know. You can't keep up with how many people are mad at each other, right? I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
just is going to happen. And so I always try to position myself right in the middle of pit road, and I just you'll see me like this. If you catch me
Mm-hmm.
post race at Martinsville, I am like this. I mean, I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
where's it at? Is anybody, is that everybody all right? And so again, unless you have something specific like Sam Mayer and Ty
Yeah.
Gibbs, when that stuff happens, you're like, okay, I know where I'm going. I know exactly where I'll be. But yeah, definitely intuition, knowing the psychology, knowing all that stuff. You pick it up as you go on, but it certainly
Mm-hmm.
helps.
Alrighty, well, Noah, I appreciate your time here today, and I thank all of you guys so much for watching our interview here today with Noah Lewis. Noah, any final remarks?
Yeah, just appreciate you having me on. It was really fun to answer a few questions, and hopefully it was helpful not only for the assignment purposes, but just in general for anybody watching, for you yourself. I love doing these things. It is truly full circle for me
Mm-hmm.
because I was the person that was reaching out to anybody and everybody to hear answers, to hear advice, and it's such a big thing that helped me. And so any way I can be helpful, I absolutely love to be for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see myself being in your same spot down the road. I think it's kind of a circle of life if you think about it.
So I hope I see you around the track soon.
I hope so too. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but you also followed me on my Twitter account.
Yes,
So thank you. I'm very very honored.
for
Um,
sure.
all right. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching, and we shall see you guys in the next interview that we may possibly do. And as always, take it easy, guys.